I never thought my sister's engagement party would be the night I'd discover who I really was. But standing in that marble-floored ballroom, holding a leather folder I'd carried in my purse for 3 weeks, I was about to learn that sometimes the cruelest truths lead to the most unexpected freedom. My name is Emma, and I'm 35 years old. For as long as I can remember, I've been the odd one out in my family. Not in obvious ways, not in ways anyone outside could see, but in 1,000 small moments that add up to a lifetime of feeling like you're standing on the wrong side of a glass wall. My grandmother raised me. That's what I always believed. Margaret Chen, a woman whose posture was so perfect it made my spine ache just looking at her, who wore pearls to breakfast and believed that grace under pressure was the only virtue worth having. My aunt, her daughter, lived with us too, along with my cousin Sophia. We were a household of women in a restored Victorian in Pacific Heights, and from the outside, we must have looked like something from a magazine. I loved architecture from the time I was 8 years old. I'd spend hours sketching the houses in our neighborhood, trying to understand how people created spaces that felt like home. My grandmother never understood it. Drawing houses, Emma? When you could be studying something practical? But I kept at it. Put myself through Berkeley, worked 3 jobs to pay for it because family money, I was told, was reserved for real investments. I made partner at Morrison & Webb 2 months ago, youngest partner in the firm's 40-year history. I designed the renovation of the Ferry Building's East Wing and a community center in Oakland that won a national award. I thought maybe, finally, I'd earned something. Recognition. Pride. A place at the table that felt like it was really mine. Sophia's engagement party was held at the Fairmont. The entire gold room, because my Aunt Catherine never did anything by halves. Sophia was marrying Preston Whitmore III, exactly the kind of man our family approved of. Old money, older values, the kind of pedigree that came with vacation homes and country club memberships. I wore a midnight blue dress I'd found at a consignment shop and splurged on getting tailored perfectly. I did my own hair. I arrived alone because I'd broken up with David 3 months earlier when I realized I was dating him partly because he was someone my grandmother would approve of. I was trying to learn to stop doing that. The room was full of white orchids and champagne flutes and people whose names appeared on museum donor walls. I hugged Sophia, kissed my aunt's cheek, nodded respectfully to my grandmother. I was good at this dance. 35 years of practice. Sophia pulled me aside early in the evening. She looked beautiful, radiant in the way people do when their lives are unfolding exactly as planned. Emma, I'm so glad you're here. Of course I'm here. I wouldn't miss this. I know you've been working so hard. The family's really proud of you, you know. I smiled because that's what you do. Thank you. Mother wants to make a toast soon. She asked me to make sure you were in the room. Something in her voice made me look at her more closely. Sophia, is everything okay? She squeezed my hand. Just be ready, okay? I tried to talk to her, but you know how she gets. Before I could ask what she meant, my aunt's voice rang out across the room. Everyone, if I could have your attention, please. The conversations died down. 200 people turned toward the small stage where a microphone had been set up. My aunt stood there, my grandmother beside her, both of them picture-perfect in designer dresses. Preston, darling, come up here with Sophia, my aunt called. They climbed the steps, hand in hand, looking like they'd stepped out of a wedding magazine. My aunt began to speak about love and family and the joining of 2 wonderful people. Standard engagement party fare. I was already planning my exit, already thinking about the work I had waiting for me at home. Then her tone changed. You know, this family has always valued honesty, my aunt said, her voice taking on a quality I recognized. The one she used when she wanted to sound noble while doing something cruel. And as we welcome Preston into our family, I think it's important to be clear about who we are and where we come from. My stomach dropped. Blood matters, my grandmother added, her voice carrying despite the fact that she wasn't near the microphone. Lineage. Heritage. These things define us. My aunt nodded. Which is why I want to take this moment to clarify something that's been, shall we say, a family secret for far too long. I could feel eyes turning toward me. People who knew our family, who understood what was coming even before the words were spoken. Emma, my aunt said, looking directly at me with something that almost resembled pity but wasn't quite that kind. Sweetheart, I think you deserve the truth. We all do. My hands went cold. You were never really one of us. Not by blood. We took you in after your parents died, yes, but not out of family obligation. The state provided significant benefits for taking in an orphaned child. Adoption assistance, tax credits, monthly subsidies. It was, quite frankly, a financially advantageous arrangement. The room had gone silent. 200 people watching me. We gave you a good home, a good education, my grandmother added. You should be grateful. But this is Sophia's night, and she deserves to be surrounded by her real family, the people who share her blood. I stood there, my purse clutched in my hand, and for a moment I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. 35 years of feeling like I didn't quite belong, and now I knew why. Someone laughed nervously. A few people looked away, embarrassed for me. Sophia's eyes were full of tears, but she didn't speak. Preston looked uncomfortable, like he'd just realized what kind of family he was marrying into, and I felt something shift inside me. Something that had been locked away for 3 weeks, since the lawyer called me out of the blue and asked me to come to his office. I reached into my purse and pulled out the leather folder. That's an interesting story, I said, and my voice surprised me with how steady it was. Can I share one too? My aunt's smile faltered. Emma, I don't think this is the time. No, I think it's the perfect time. I walked toward the stage, and people moved aside to let me through. Since we're being honest about family and blood and who really belongs. I climbed the steps. Sophia reached for my hand, but I gently pulled away. 3 weeks ago, I got a call from a lawyer named Bernard Hastings. He said he'd been trying to find me for 6 months. He was the executor of a will. My grandmother's face changed. I saw recognition flash across her features. My grandfather's will, I continued. Robert Chen. He died 7 years ago, as everyone here knows. I was told I'd inherited a small amount, enough to help with college. But apparently, that wasn't the whole story. I opened the leather folder. Inside was a letter, yellowed with age but preserved carefully, and several legal documents. My grandfather left instructions that these were only to be given to me if certain conditions were met. Specifically, if I ever faced a situation where I needed to know the truth about my family. Emma, this isn't appropriate, my aunt said, her voice sharp. Neither was what you just did, I replied, but I'm going to finish. I pulled out the letter and began to read. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, it means the truth has finally come to light in the cruelest possible way, and for that, I am so deeply sorry. I tried to protect you. I tried to make Margaret see reason, to make Catherine understand, but they were both so consumed with appearances and control that they couldn't see the damage they were doing. My grandmother tried to speak, but I kept reading. You were never adopted, Emma. You are my granddaughter by blood. You are the daughter of my son, James Chen. The room erupted in whispers. James was my firstborn. I continued reading. He left home when he was 22 because he wanted to be a teacher, not a businessman. Margaret never forgave him for choosing a different path. When he married your mother, Sarah, she came from a working-class family. No money, no connections, nothing Margaret valued. They cut him off completely. I looked up at my grandmother. Her face was white. You had a brother? Someone in the crowd whispered. James and Sarah died in a car accident when you were 2 years old. I wanted to take you in myself, but I was already sick with the cancer that would take me years later. I begged Margaret to bring you home, to raise you as her granddaughter. She refused. Said she wouldn't raise the child of a man who'd betrayed the family. My voice cracked, but I kept going. Catherine agreed to take you in only after I showed her the financial benefits. Only after I promised to cover your expenses and more. They made it look like charity, like kindness, but it was a business transaction. They took the government benefits and the money I provided, and they spent it on themselves while making you believe you were a burden. Tears were streaming down my face now. Emma, you are my granddaughter. You carry my blood and your father's spirit. I'm leaving you everything. The house in Pacific Heights, the properties in Napa and Monterey, the investment portfolio. 70% of my estate? It's yours. It always should have been. The folder slipped from my hand. Papers scattered across the stage. My grandmother grabbed for them, but I was faster. The remaining 30% goes to Catherine, I read from another document. On the condition that she uses it to support herself and Sophia, and that she never contacts Emma again unless Emma initiates contact. This is insane, my aunt shouted. Robert was delusional at the end. This will can be contested. It won't hold up. Hastings assured me it would, I said quietly. My grandfather was very thorough. He included provisions for exactly this scenario. Letters from doctors confirming his sound mind. Video testimony. Witness statements. I looked at Sophia, who was crying openly now. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out another letter. This one's from my father. My grandfather kept it all these years. I didn't read it aloud this time. It was too personal, too painful, but I scanned the words I'd already memorized. Emma, if you ever read this, know that your mother and I loved you more than anything in this world. We were building a life, simple but full of joy. I'm sorry I won't be there to see the woman you'll become, but I know you'll be extraordinary. Be kind, be brave, and never let anyone make you feel less than you are. At the bottom was a photograph, faded but clear. A young couple holding a baby. My father looked like me. Same eyes, same smile, same stubborn chin. I'd stared at that photograph for hours over the past 3 weeks, trying to reconcile the man in the picture with the story I'd been told all my life. The ballroom was completely silent now. My grandmother finally spoke, her voice shaking. Emma, you don't understand the full situation. There were reasons. Circumstances you can't possibly know. Then explain them, I said. Tell me why you let me grow up thinking I was a charity case. Tell me why you took money meant for me and used it to fund Sophia's private schools and vacations while I worked 3 jobs. Tell me why you made me feel grateful for scraps when I was entitled to everything. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. My aunt stepped forward. Your grandfather was a bitter old man who couldn't accept that James abandoned this family. He rewrote history to make himself feel better about his failure as a father. James didn't abandon anyone, a voice said from the back of the room. Everyone turned. An older man was walking toward the stage. He was tall, Asian, maybe in his 60s. I'd never seen him before. Who are you? My grandmother demanded. David Chen, he said. James's best friend. I was his roommate in college. I was at his wedding, and I was at his funeral, which, Margaret, you did not attend. My grandmother flinched. James didn't abandon his family, David continued. He tried for years to reconcile. Sent letters, made calls, all ignored. He showed me those letters. He cried over them. He wanted nothing more than for his daughter to know her family. He climbed onto the stage and stood beside me. Robert asked me to watch over Emma from a distance, to make sure she was okay. I'm the one who contacted Mr. Hastings. When I saw the engagement announcement in the paper and realized what Catherine might be planning, he turned to me. Your father was one of the best men I ever knew. He'd be so proud of you. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. David pulled something from his jacket pocket. He left this for you. Asked me to keep it safe until the right time. It was a small velvet box. Inside was a jade pendant on a gold chain. It was your grandmother's, on your mother's side, David said. Sarah wore it on their wedding day. James wanted you to have it. The pendant was warm in my hand, smooth and cool at the same time. Sophia suddenly stepped forward. She was still crying, but there was something different in her face now. Something like clarity. I knew, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I found letters when I was 16. Letters from Grandpa Robert to Mother, asking her to tell Emma the truth. I confronted Mother about it, and she said it was complicated. That there were reasons. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. She looked at me. I'm so sorry, Emma. I should have told you. I should have said something. I was a coward. Sophia, be quiet, my aunt hissed. Sophia's voice was stronger now. No, I'm not going to be quiet anymore. This is wrong. This has always been wrong. She turned to Preston. I need to talk to you. Alone. They walked off the stage together. My grandmother tried one more time. Emma, please. Can we discuss this privately? There's no need to air family business in front of all these people. You aired it first, I said. You made this public. I'm just making sure the whole truth comes out. I gathered the papers, put them back in the folder, and tucked my father's pendant into my purse. I'm leaving now, I said. Hastings will be in contact with both of you about the estate transfer. I'm keeping the house. I'm keeping everything my grandfather left me. And I'm done pretending to be grateful for crumbs. I walked down the steps and through the crowd. People parted silently. Some looked at me with pity, some with respect, some with the kind of hunger that comes from witnessing spectacular drama. David Chen followed me out. We stood on the street outside the Fairmont, the fog rolling in from the bay, the sound of cable cars in the distance. "Thank you," I said, "for looking out for me, for bringing the pendant." "Your father made me promise," David said. "He had a feeling things might go this way. He didn't trust his mother or sister even then." "Will you tell me about him?" I asked. "About my parents? I'll tell you everything," he said. "I have photographs, letters, stories. Your father was funny and kind and absolutely terrible at basketball, but he played anyway because it made people laugh. Your mother was brilliant. She taught high school English and made Shakespeare come alive for kids who'd never read a play before." I felt something loosen in my chest. Something that had been tight for so long I'd forgotten it was there. "I have a life they would have wanted me to have," I said. "Don't I?" "You have exactly the life they would have wanted," David confirmed. "And they'd be so proud of the woman you've become. All on your own." My phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "I'm so sorry. Can we talk? I want to make this right." Another text. From a number I didn't recognize. "This is Preston. I told Sophia we need to postpone the wedding. She needs time to figure out who she is outside of her mother's shadow. Thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth." And then one from Mr. Hastings. "I saw the live stream someone posted. Your grandfather would be proud. The paperwork will be ready for your signature Monday morning." I looked up at the fog-shrouded city lights. "What are you going to do now?" David asked. "I'm going to go home," I said. "To my apartment. Pack some things. And tomorrow, I'm going to go see the house in Pacific Heights. The one that's actually mine. And after that, I'm going to live my life," I said. "The one I've been building all along. The one they tried to make me feel I didn't deserve." He smiled. "Your father would love that answer." We exchanged information. He promised to have coffee with me next week, to start sharing those stories. I walked to my car, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt like I was walking toward something instead of away from it. The next morning, I stood in front of the Victorian in Pacific Heights. It was even more beautiful than I remembered. David had met me there with the keys Mr. Hastings had sent over. The inside smelled like furniture polish and old books. My grandmother's things were everywhere, but Mr. Hastings had assured me she'd already moved most of her personal items to my aunt's condo. I walked through rooms I'd been allowed in as a child and rooms I'd been forbidden to enter. I found my grandfather's study, untouched since his death. On his desk was another envelope with my name on it. Inside was a property deed. The community center I'd designed in Oakland, the one that won the award. My grandfather had purchased the land years ago and held it in trust. "For Emma's dream," the note said. "Whatever that dream may be." I sat in his leather chair and cried. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that someone had believed in me all along. Someone had seen me. My phone rang. Sophia. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "I broke off the engagement," she said without preamble. "Preston and I talked all night. He said he couldn't marry into a family that would treat someone the way we treated you. He's right. Sophia, let me finish. I'm moving out of Mother's place. I'm getting my own apartment. And I'm starting therapy because I need to figure out why I stood by and watched what they did to you for so many years." "You were young," I said. "I'm 28, Emma. I haven't been young for a long time. I made choices. Bad ones. And I'm sorry." I looked around the study, at the life my grandfather had preserved for me. "I don't know if we can be close," I said honestly. "Not right now. Maybe not ever. But I don't hate you, Sophia. I just need space." "I understand," she said. "I'll be here when you're ready." "If you're ever ready." We hung up. I spent the rest of the day exploring the house. Found boxes in the attic labeled with my father's name. Inside were his childhood drawings, his college papers, photographs of him and my mother. I found my mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved. Found letters they'd written to each other, full of inside jokes and plans for the future. Found a baby book with my footprints and first curl of hair and a note in my mother's handwriting. Emma laughed for the first time today. The whole world got brighter. I brought everything down to the study and spent hours going through it all, piecing together the story of who I came from. That evening, David came by with Chinese takeout and more photographs. "Your father and I used to get dim sum every Sunday," he said. "It was our tradition." I stopped after he died. Couldn't face it without him. "Where did you go?" I asked. Little place in Chinatown. Best Hargao in the city. Maybe we could go, I said. Together. Start a new tradition. His eyes got misty. I'd like that very much. We ate kung pao chicken and fried rice in my grandfather's study, and David told me stories about my father teaching middle school kids who thought they were too cool for poetry and somehow making them care about Langston Hughes. He told me about my mother organizing donation drives and coaching students through college applications and staying late every day to tutor anyone who needed help. They were the kind of people who made the world better just by being in it, David said. And you're just like them. A week later, I went back to work. My partners congratulated me on the inheritance, though I could tell they'd heard about the engagement party. News like that spreads fast in certain circles. We'd like to make you lead on the new waterfront project, my senior partner said. If you're interested, I'm interested, I said. But I'd also like to propose something. A pro bono project. A renovation of the community center my grandfather left me. Turn it into something really special for the neighborhood. Using your inheritance? Some of it, I said. And I'll fundraise for the rest. I want to build something that matters. Something that would make my parents proud. He smiled. Let's do it. I threw myself into work, into designing spaces that felt like home for people who needed them. I had Sunday dim sum with David and listened to more stories. I slowly started going through my grandmother's things in the house, deciding what to keep and what to let go. My aunt never contacted me. My grandmother sent one letter, asking if we could talk. I wasn't ready yet. Maybe I never would be. But Sophia kept her distance like I'd asked, sending only occasional texts. Thinking of you. Proud of what you're building. Here when you're ready? 3 months later, I was at the community center overseeing the start of demolition when a young woman approached me. Emma Chen? She asked. I'm Lisa Tran. I'm a social worker. I was hoping to talk to you about a girl in the foster system. Her name is Maya. My heart started beating faster. Maya is 17, Lisa continued. She's been in care since she was 8. Smart, resilient, but she's aging out soon and she doesn't have anywhere to go. She wants to study architecture. Why are you telling me this? I asked, though I already knew. Because David Chen suggested I reach out to you. He said you might understand what it's like to need family. And he mentioned you have a very large house that could use some life in it. I met Maya the following week. She was quiet, guarded, with dark eyes that had seen too much too young. She carried a portfolio of sketches that took my breath away. These are beautiful, I said, looking at her drawings of buildings that didn't exist yet but should. They're just dreams, she said. Dreams are important, I told her. They're how everything worthwhile starts. We talked for hours. About architecture and loss, and what it means to build something that lasts. I'm not looking for a mother, Maya said finally. I had one. She's gone. But I could use a mentor. Someone who understands. I could use someone to fill up some of those empty rooms, I said. And I have a lot to learn about being family to someone. But I'd like to try. If you would. She moved in 2 weeks later. We set her up in the bedroom that had been my father's, surrounded by his books and drawings. Your dad was an artist too, she said, looking at his childhood sketches. He was, I said. I think he'd like knowing someone was using his space. Maya started at Berkeley in the fall, the same program I'd gone through. I helped her with her first design projects, and she helped me remember why I'd fallen in love with architecture in the first place. On Sundays, the 3 of us had dim sum. May, David, and Maya. A strange little family, built not from blood but from choice and understanding and the belief that everyone deserves a place to belong. I eventually met with Sophia for coffee. She was working at a nonprofit now, helping women leave abusive relationships. She'd cut her hair short and stopped wearing the designer clothes our aunt always insisted on. I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not performing for Mother, she said. It's harder than I thought. It takes time, I said. Do you think we can ever be real sisters? She asked. I thought about it. I think we can try. But it has to be honest. No more pretending. No more protecting people who don't deserve it. Deal, she said. It wasn't perfect. There were hard conversations and moments when the old hurt surfaced. But we were trying. I never reconciled with my grandmother or aunt. Some wounds run too deep, some betrayals too fundamental. But I made peace with it. They gave me survival skills and a drive to succeed that served me well. They just couldn't give me love. I found that elsewhere. A year after that engagement party, I stood in the completely renovated community center. It had studios for art classes, a library, meeting rooms, and a full architectural workshop for kids who wanted to learn design. David stood beside me at the opening ceremony. Maya was there too, along with Sophia and 50 kids from the neighborhood. Above the entrance, a plaque read, "The James and Sarah Chen Community Center. Building dreams, building home." I thought about my parents, who I'd never really known but who I carried with me every day. I thought about my grandfather, who'd protected me the only way he knew how. I thought about the girl I'd been, always feeling like she was on the outside looking in, and I realized I'd finally come home. Not to a house or a family name, but to myself. That was the real inheritance. Not the money or the property, but the understanding that I was exactly who I was supposed to be. That I'd always been enough. That the people who mattered had seen me all along. I pulled out my father's pendant, the one I wore every day now, and held it tight. "Thank you," I whispered, to parents I'd never known and a grandfather who'd loved me from a distance. "Thank you for showing me the way home." And in that moment, surrounded by the community I'd built and the family I'd chosen, I finally understood what it meant to belong.